there's a way to guarantee a high floor, and while that may limit your ceiling, that's that safe space, right? And a lot of people are raised in that mindset. It just did not resonate with me at all, though. So I wanted that untapped ceiling at the risk of losing my floor, 100%.
This is the Yield Coach Show, Season 1, Episode 25. I am your host, Ian Brown, where every episode we bring you dynamic entrepreneurs, real estate investors, business leaders, and inspirational guests ready to open up, share their story, the good, the bad, the ugly, so you can gain advantages, learn lessons, and accelerate your own success. I am very excited today to have Christian Bachelder on the show. Christian is an investor. He's also the owner and founder of the One Brokerage, and that is a lending platform. He actually began as a chemical engineer from UC Berkeley, turned investor, lender, real estate broker, and insurance agent. Wild ride. Christian, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Wonderful. Well, you're a unique guest with a diverse background. Tell us how you came to be sitting here talking to me, making loans and buying real estate.
Yeah, really good question, because my journey was definitely unconventional for sure. Kind of as you stated, started off in a wildly different field, just about, I would argue, as different as it could possibly get. I did major chemical engineering from UC Berkeley. I thought my whole life I'd either go into some sort of medical profession or engineering, higher science, basically, right? That's kind of the way that my family taught me. Is nobody in my family is a business owner or an entrepreneur or anything in that degree. Everybody believes you go get a high degree and you go become successful in that field. I was good at it, but I hated it. So I was one of those unique ones that my natural skill sets did not coincide with my enjoyment in life. And that led to me obviously seeking other opportunities. So after I graduated from Berkeley, tried out the industry a little bit, decided I didn't want to just be behind a computer, running algorithms, running systems and predictions of what plants and chemical reactions do, right? So it's actually funny, one of my childhood really good friends, his dad owned a small local real estate brokerage, right? Pretty simple, not huge volume, nothing crazy. But he basically just gave me a shot. He said, hey, you can come here. I'm not going to say no, right? And very quickly decided that it's something that not only I enjoy, but really developed quickly that I could help people and I had a passion for it, right? And that's a lot more that I could say from where I came from. And obviously, expanding from that, for those of you familiar with the One Brokerage, I am partnered with David Greene of the Bigger Pockets podcast. We joined forces, kind of put both of our skill sets together, and created the One Brokerage, which is an all-encompassing lending company. We do everything from conventional loans to non-QM to our kind of unique investor loans, and that's allowed us. We're the quickest growing mortgage brokerage in the country, which we're really excited and proud about. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty much all I got for you.
Well, I mean, that's an amazing kickoff. Let's unpack that a little bit. Number
Absolutely.
one, starting from, we'll call them humble beginnings and moving into this advanced education, was it imparted on you at an early age, like get to school, get those degrees, litter the wall with certificates and diplomas, and that's the path? Because that's what I was told growing up. Yeah,
absolutely. And I appreciate you say humble beginnings, because I was by no means raised in a wealthy household, in a successful household. I had external family members. I had uncles and aunts who were doctors and successful people. My mom's a registered nurse. She had me when she was very young. I had to, I was with her, through nursing school when I was a toddler. And I've lived in like people's attics, right? Like we rented every space that was available. So I was absolutely taught with that mindset, though. My grandfather was a World War II veteran and a doctor, and he kind of instilled in the family, like, hey, there's one right way to do life, and that's add up as many symbols after your name as you can, right? My uncle's an MD, PhD, and he's one of the top, like, eye surgeons in America at this point. But that was absolutely the mindset, though. Like I shared it, not an entrepreneurial mindset, not somebody who, make or break it, where your floor is, as low as it can go, but your ceiling's also very high. My family is more so in that middle ground, right? That there's a way to guarantee a high floor, and while that may limit your ceiling, that's that safe space, right? And a lot of people are raised in that mindset. It just did not resonate with me at all, though. So I wanted that untapped ceiling, at the risk of losing my floor, 100%.
Excellent. Yeah, I was. My parents were when I grew up, my dad eventually was an attorney and my mom was a principal. But when I was younger, they were both school teachers. And so that's kind of the environment I grew up in. Golden retriever, school teacher parents, 3 little brothers. And I think because they were both in education, I saw that they looked up to authors. They looked up to like educational thought leaders. And I just, as a kid, I'm like, oh, I want to have a lot of education, and then I can impart that on others. And so I actually was a high school teacher right out of undergrad at Florida State. And I coached football, coached track, taught history. And I did enjoy the profession, but I was like, man, I just can't see doing this for a career, like for a lifetime. It's kind of fun doing this podcast and helping others because in a way it feels a little bit like being back in that high school classroom, just with, students that they actually want to learn something. And when I was teaching, it was like 05, 06, 07. So like, I think the Apple iPhone as we know it came out like in 07. So the kids they had like a sidekick they're trying to text, But
I had a Razor. I was Team Razor.
Team Razor, nice. Yeah, so that wasn't so bad. But just to draw the parallel, my investing got kicked off 6 or 7 years ago, largely because I had to accumulate so much debt to get all these degrees, especially the JD. And people ask me, like, oh, do you regret it? It's hard to say because the real estate investing has allowed me to pay all those, to have the money to satisfy all those loans. And some of the deals I've done, it might have helped that I had the education, but I think by and large, I could never recommend someone to take that path because what if you took on all the debt that I took on and you didn't have the investment success or you 100%. Couldn't, and then you'd just be totally stuck with that albatross. So, but to make it obviously applicable to you, coming into UC Berkeley and getting the chemical engineering, did that saddle you with debt or were you able to get out?
Really good question. And I'm really glad you asked that because this isn't something that I've been able to share very much. It was actually real estate. They got me through Berkeley. My mom worked her butt off. I won't curse, but worked her butt off. Multiple hospitals, was on call. She's a psychiatric nurse, so she's the one, like, when crazy guy comes into the ER threatening to kill everybody, she's the one going and talking him off the ledge and determining, are you actually crazy or are you just drunk and your girlfriend broke up with you, right? But she's got that really hard job, right? I mean, she's got people screaming at her, calling her every name in the book. Worked very hard, and she was able to buy a house when I was in high school. Bought a house, very, very, very average house, right, in the San Bernardino Valley in Los Angeles County in California. It was $500,000 at the time, and I love her story because it shows me that investing even at the worst time in history leads to good things. She bought a house in 2007. 2007, just about the worst time you could have ever bought a house in America, right? Yeah. A year and a half later, her $500,000 house was worth $350,000, and she put her hard-earned savings. She had gone through an unfortunate divorce prior to that, but she had a little bit of savings. She had $100,000, 20% down, $500,000 house because that's the way you're supposed to buy, right? 20% down, and that's the only way to do it. That's what she believed at the time. And to her defense, that's what most people still believe, right? But hard-earned money, put it down, and then she was $50,000 underwater. Had a long-term plan, stable job. She was one of the fortunate ones that didn't get laid off or lose her job. She was a nurse, so very, very consistent income. Kept making her mortgage, right? Just kept paying it. 5 years later, it was back up to $500,000. 7 years later, it was to $600,000. She utilized debt like we coach and how we advise people to do. That house, purchased during the worst time in arguably American history to buy real estate, paid for my school. It paid for a new car when her car broke down, and she actually went back to school and got her master's in nursing from that house. No money out of her pocket. Very average house. It was money she'd be spending on rent anyways. That house paid for all of that. That's which beautiful. To me is incredible. And granted, I got some scholarships and grants for Berkeley, but she paid $50,000, $60,000, right, out of that couple $100,000 in appreciation she had out of the house. And then she went and got her online master's degree as well. So I love that because it, obviously that's kind of the market that we're in right now. People are worried about crashes and all that. And man, if you have a long-term goal with real estate, there's nothing like it. The way the tax code's written in America and the benefits that it gives and the appreciation that, is not guaranteed year over year, but it is long-term, right? It's just, there's nothing like it, right? And it allows somebody who shouldn't have gone to Berkeley. I shouldn't have been able to go to Berkeley. right? And it only happened because my mom just bought a house. That's it. Not any crazy investing strategy, just bought a house. Very easy to overlook, but I have a lot of my history and my success was literally because my mom bought a house, which is cool.
That's a wonderful story, and it's a good segue. Obviously, we're here on the Yield Coach Show talking about real estate and investments and your concentration in lending. So I think there's no better segue than that. So mom bought a house, it set you up, got you through college, got her through advanced degrees. I held on to, I bought a house. It was actually, I had one before the downturn, and I did short sell it. And I knew when I short sold it, well, you know this, Dill. I actually short sold it after I secured the property that I wanted in 2009. So I bought the 09 property. I'm in Florida, so I bought one down by the beach that I knew would have good appreciation. I short sold the one that was in town that was in like a 300 unit condo development that was not coming back anytime soon. And then I held on there on forward. And that little move right there, which sounds minor, it was really just two decisions. It set me up to have, 6-figure liquidity down the road later to get into other deals. So your One Brokerage, I'd like to just, if you're ready for it, let's just kind of maybe jump into that, how that came to be. I mean, I know you went from engineering into, lending. You're also a real estate agent and you do insurance. But on the One Brokerage platform, you said you do conventional and non-conventional. Can you just hit us with kind of broad strokes about what the One Brokerage offers?
Yeah, I think it would make sense to just tell a little bit of why we created it, because I think that explains, you don't understand the destination without understanding the journey a little bit, right? So I was a realtor for a couple years, and I was finding myself increasingly frustrated with sending out referrals to lenders or sending out referrals to insurance brokers, right? I don't want to speak ill of the industry, but there's a very low barrier to entry. There just is. Realtors are the same way. Lenders are the same way. It doesn't take very much to become one. You don't got to go to school. You take like a 40-hour online course that people usually just click next on, right? There's not some crazy certification you have to get. So I found these partners that I was referring to, and I was doing a decent bit of business myself, and I just became so disenamored with the service that they were giving my client, because ultimately, as you may know, as people in the service industry know, when you give a referral, it's kind of like you're doing that job. That's like you put your name on that person, right? So I chose the hard route, and I said, okay, I'll do it myself. Became a lender. I then developed these same feelings for my insurance referrals, so became an insurance agent. And after that happened, it's funny, I actually got connected to David Greene from Bigger Pockets, and we were working on a similar customer where I was a lender on the file and he was the realtor, right? We just kind of hit it off. Right? It's like, oh, you kind of think of things a little bit differently. We're kind of on the same page. That eventually led to doing a little bit more deals together, eventually led to a full bona fide partnership. And, it was something where David has obviously offered me an ability to stand on a platform, and I've given David, systems and processes, right? And it's been a fusion that I think couldn't have been better anywhere else, right? I think we gave each other exactly what we needed. And it allowed us to build something that's doing really well and we're proud of, and we're able to provide, the guidance and advice that we were looking for when we first got started to our investors. And I say all that to then segue into pretty much any lending program that's available, we have, right? We can do your conventional loans for your first-time home buyers, your second home loans at 10% down, your FHA multifamilies, right? We're not in every state in America, but we're in many of them. By the end of this year, we should be nationwide, maybe minus 1 or 2 states. But our real bread and butter is our investor products. And that's for the people who now find themselves in maybe your position, my position, David's position, where we either own businesses and your write-offs are too significant, or you own more than 10 properties and you don't qualify conventional anymore. We have really unique programs where there's no income requirement, so no W-2s, no tax returns, no 1099s, like normal conventional lending. Instead, the property itself qualifies. So if you buy a property that's, let's say, $500,000 and your monthly payment is $3,500 a month, but you can get $3,600 a month in rent, that's technically a cash flowing asset, right? And they don't consider like CapEx or any of the stuff that obviously you should as an investor. They just care about the gross, right? Is there enough money here to pay your mortgage? And that's really the only requirement. Usually it starts at about 20% down. And it's something that, hasn't really been available until the last couple of years. This has always been how commercial lending works. right? When you go buy a 400-unit apartment complex, they don't go look in the area and say, what did all the other 400-unit apartment complexes sell for as comparables? They treat it as a business. This is an income-producing asset, and they get the loan based on the income of the property, not what you do for your W-2 job, right? So it's nice. We just took that idea of commercial underwriting and brought it into the 1 to 4, 1 to 8 unit residential space, which works for the normal buyer, right?
I'm glad you said that, Christian. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. So I was going to ask you about the scope of unit count. I'm familiar with like the 1 to 4 DSCR product. So your platform will go up to an 8 unit.
We can actually go. We don't really have a cap. Our tried and true DSCR loan product is really strong 1 to 4 units. We can take it up to 1 to 8. One of our investors will even do 1 to 12. The requirements just change a little bit. There's usually significant reserve requirements, and usually you have to put 25 or 30% down instead of 20. So just, yes, we can offer it. The loan products just change. And once you get into those larger asset types, usually the minimum loan amount will go up as well. So, for instance, we can't do a 12 unit for like a $400,000 purchase price, right? You have to buy like a larger unit. But the 1 to 4, we can slam dunk those all day. That's really the bread and butter sweet spot.
Okay, so for the listeners, you're hearing Christian tell you to go out there and buy, your small multifamily 2 to 4 and 80, 20 LTV, 30-year AM, Christian?
30-year AM, fixed rate, correct.
Fixed rate, 30-year AM, and it's going to be a debt coverage analysis. And Christian can correct me if I botch this, but they're looking at your gross proceeds, your revenue, your top line. So versus, you are correct. That's how commercial loans are looking at the asset, not the individual. They know that I can't float this 83-unit apartment I have in Georgia with my small law firm.
That's right.
Yeah, but they still gave me the loan. It's just to your point. That's the way commercial lending is. But with the debt coverage service product that you have, I was curious. Do you ever hit a count where they say, you have too many of these, or is it unlimited?
That's a good question, and yes, there is a situation where you'd hit too many, but we have over 150 investors in our network. We would just pivot you to the next one, and I promise you will not buy enough property to have all 150 of them say no, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have investors that we pivot around to. We have investors that are stronger in different states. So that's kind of when we tell our borrowers, they ask a question like that, and I say, hey, don't worry about it. I'm going to build a roadmap for you. Follow my roadmap and you'll be fine, right? I know how to pivot and edit all these things. It may not be the same investor on every loan that you do, and that's okay. I'm going to make the decision that puts you in the best path of success, right? And yeah, we every time we schedule an intro call with somebody or a consult, this is how we build it out. We get an analysis of what they're looking to do, and then we piecemeal everything that we know in the industry that's out there, and we build a roadmap for them. And then I'm going to lay the brick road, just walk it, right? Mm-hmm. Which is pretty cool. And
Christian, you mentioned some things that the audience may or may not grasp. But before I get there, do you lend in Florida, for my own knowledge?
I do.
Awesome. Check that box. So you're going on gross proceeds or gross revenue, top line revenue for a debt coverage, which is great if you're an investor. It allows you to reach and buy more property. You're not reserving for CapEx, at least on the 2 to 4 unit product, 1 to 4 unit product?
Correct. Just in terms of the mortgage qualifying. Now, should you do that as an investor? Of course. Right.
Oh, yeah.
But just for loan qualification, it's gross rents divided by what we call the PITA, the PITIA, right? So it's principal, interest, tax, and insurance on your mortgage. And the A is like if there's anything else, like if there's special tax assessments or HOAs. Right, is the most common one. All of that added together has to be less than what your gross rents are per month.
And just to drill down a little bit further, what would be a debt coverage ratio that's acceptable? Is it just a 1.0, a 1.1? Where do you have to be?
Good question. So we have 2 brackets, over 1 and under 1. If it's over 1, you get the best pricing. We can still do the loan if it's under 1. It's just a rate increase. Okay? So there's not a limit. And a lot of people, and maybe I'm getting ahead of you here, a lot of people ask about short-term rentals, right? How do I get my... Yeah, I figure that's where you're going, especially being in Florida, right? Properties on the beach tend to, more often than not, tend to end up on Airbnb, right? And I'm an Airbnb investor myself, and I can tell you I worked with our investors to actually build this product. We have a really unique product where we can pivot out I call it the Indiana Jones. Remember when he did that rock trick, right? Flipped out one and put in the weight for holding its place. So we pull out the long-term rent estimates that every other lender in the nation defaults to going by. That's usually on the appraisal or on a lease agreement that you have. and we're able to substitute in short-term rentals on a projection basis. So that's like we go to AirDNA, or maybe you have a property manager in the area that's capable of issuing you a pro forma, right? And I mean, I have properties myself in Florida. I was able to qualify for the purchase using the Airbnb projected income instead of my $3,000 a month that my property in Bradenton, Florida would rent for, when in reality it's on Airbnb making $18,000 a month, right? So very, very different product. There are some requirements that you need. You either need Airbnb experience, or it needs to be in an area that is well known for Airbnb. That's the Florida coast, the Smoky Mountains, Palm Springs in California, places like that, right?
Okay. Well, that's exciting. And yes, I do. Selfishly, yes, I have. I'm running 3 right now, and I'm bringing 4 more on. I'm converting a 4-unit office to a 4-unit Airbnb. It'll be done in... I'm hoping to be booking rooms before Halloween. We're close.
There you go. That's exciting.
I'll have to refi that one, so maybe I'll get back with you, Christian, when it's time to refi that. I had a private individual fund the whole acquisition. I'm refining it, and then I'm rehabbing it. Then I'll look to the markets for
absolutely
takeout financing.
Yeah, would love to help you out. Obviously, we'll review the file and let you know what we can offer. But we got some good ones.
I wish I would have met you before, because I actually was trying to go a conventional fix and flip loan and then either refi with either like one of your Airbnb products or just a traditional rental product. But because I was going from office, it was in office since 1984. It had only been office.
Got it.
I was way down the process. I almost had to cancel my contract with the seller, but my lender pulled out late because the appraiser wouldn't put my property on the URAR form because it was an office, and he's like. And he was a commercial appraiser, but he's like, look, I was engaged to do like a 1-to-4 unit URAR document. I'm not doing it. And no one else would touch it. And so it left me up a creek, and there I was. So it was kind of novel.
Property zoning will definitely come up, and I can tell you I have fought the good fight with appraisers more times than I care to admit. That's the most common reason a deal dies, unfortunately. But yeah, I know if you get it rezoned, or maybe you get an appraiser to write off that it is being used in its highest and best use case, there's sometimes some gray areas that you can slip into there that get it by. But that's good to hear that your private guy was able to come through.
Yeah, it's actually my first time using just a traditional private money source. It was a physician out of Southwest Florida, and he and his friends pulled together and do some private real estate loans. So
there you go. I dig it.
So let's say I go refi with you. We talk later in the year. I probably won't refi it until it'll probably be closer to like the end of the year.
Okay.
What kind of, and then we're recording this, let's see here, it is September 14th is the date of recording. What type of, roughly, where are rates falling on these on these DSCR loans? And I don't know if it's the same for the Airbnb type loans, but what could somebody expect at least as of September 2022?
Yeah, really good question. And keep in mind, this is literally the day after we just had the new CPI announcement, right? So CPI came out yesterday, and it was slightly above what the expectation was. That hit the market, right? We had kind of a red Monday yesterday, right? Or whatever it was, Tuesday I think it was. I'm losing track of my days here. Red Tuesday. So rates have shot up in the last couple days here, right? So just we'll set the expectation with that. I will say for DSCR loans, what you can usually expect is you look at where conventional investment rates are right now, which are probably mid to high sixes, right? That's where they are. And you usually go 1.5% higher than that. So on a 30-year fixed. Right now on a ARM, you can sometimes get maybe 1% higher. And we do have ARM products on our DSCR loans, right? So we're probably in the 7.5 to 8.5% range. And that's on a 30-year fixed and on a low end, an ARM. Keep in mind, though, what we're advising a lot of people to do, if it's a purchase, if it's a refinance, you don't have this same access unless you're using your own equity. But on a purchase, if you're able to negotiate in seller credits, so say, for instance, I'm buying your property, and you're selling it to me for $500,000, right? I would say instead of, say I think the property is worth $485. That's my bottom line. That's what I want to get it to, right? What I would do is I'd say I'd offer $500, but I would have you credit me $15,000, which is 3% of the sales price, right? So you're still netting a $485,000 sales price. That's you as the seller. That looks the same to you as if the purchase price was $485. But to me, I'm buying it for $500. As long as it appraises, the loan is the same, right? My monthly payment goes up by like $20 a month, whatever it is, because there's a $15,000 bigger loan. But the difference is I can take that $15,000 and buy down my interest rate. So instead of getting a 7.5, maybe I get a 6.99 or a 6.75, right? So that's a strategy where I kind of pitch it as like, hey, would you like to get an interest rate from last year or like earlier this year? Like, perfect. When you write your offer, write an aggressive offer and get some credits. And it's the same net to you, but we can save you money over the long term by buying down your interest rate. Right. And then obviously, in 3 or 4 years, if the rates come back down, we just refi you anyways, and there was no money out of your pocket because that's money the seller gave you. Right. So it's been something that we've had a lot of really good success with, and we coach realtors to write this into their contracts because it's a way that, maybe somebody qualified for that $500,000 loan and now they don't because the rates went up. Their DTI is too high right now or whatever the case is. Buy that rate down, you can get back into where you qualify. Right. Really, really, really strong negotiating tool, especially in today's market where power is kind of shifting back to the borrowers. Right.
Mm-hmm. That was gold. I hope everybody followed that. That was really good advice. I've been a big advocate of seller credits. We both carry real estate licenses, so I would couple the two. You've probably done the same, where it's like, okay, I'll write my own offer, bring in my buyer side, let's call it 3%, and then I'd figure out the max seller credit my lender would allow, stack those two. What I was really doing was just I'm bringing less cash to the table. It jacks up my cash on cash. Some would say it makes me more leverage. I don't really think it makes me more leverage. I'm just pulling equity out of thin air with brokerage fees and seller credits. I'm not really more leveraged. Obviously, that $15,000 in your example is negligible. So I've been a big fan of the seller credit game for a long time, and I'm surprised we don't see it more. So I do commercial and residential, and I did title and escrow for 7 years. I would see the seller credit game a lot in residential, and then largely because the borrowers it was like all the cash they had to get that house. Commercially, the commercial borrowers, let's say they're buying a hotel, a larger apartment, strip center, whatever, a lot of times like the equity wasn't as sensitive of a lever, so you didn't see them necessarily playing games with credits. But I was like, well, why not? I mean, even in a commercial deal, there was a local lender. Most people probably haven't heard of them, but Vistar. I was doing smaller apartment loans, like I did a 28, I did an 8 with them. I did a 28 unit and an 8 unit with them, and they were fine with seller credits up to 5%. Wasn't even on their radar. So I just wrote the offer with my brokerage and then a seller credit 5%, moved it all over to my ledger, washed out a bunch of equity requirement, and it really jacked up the returns, and you have less money out of pocket. We can kind of. That's fine. I think the seller credit is wonderful. I heard you talk to. I was listening to one of your recent interviews, actually with I think with David Greene, and you were talking about. All right, Christian. Sorry we lost you with the internet issues. What I was saying is, tell us how people are able to get a higher loan proceed based on appraised value.
Yeah, so that's actually a really new program that we're very excited about. How it works is if you just want to operate by a basic rule of thumb, and granted, this can be done on a DSCR loan or a bridge loan. And I'll get into a bit more about the bridge loan after I explain the program. But you can lend up to 90% of the purchase price as long as that's supported by 80% of the appraised value. Mm-hmm. Okay? So that's a little difficult to understand, so I'll repeat that. If 80% of the appraised value, so we use $1 million purchase, 80% of the appraised value, say it appraises for $1 million, is $800,000. Right? Say you buy it for $900,000. Okay? 10% of $900,000 is what? $810,000. Right? So we could go all the way up to $810,000. I'm sorry, it would be capped at $800,000, but you would save what? I hope everybody's not getting confused with the math here. But instead of putting 20% down of $900,000, which would be $180,000, you'd only have to put $100,000 down to get to that $800,000 loan. So as long as the appraised value, and this obviously means it needs to over-appraise, as long as that supports 10% down, we can do it. And that's wonderful. A standard loan that normally would normally require 20% down. So that's a way you spoke a lot about, increasing return on equity or return on investment by lowering the amount you need to invest. That's one of the levers that you can pull, right? You either need to return higher or invest less. This is investing less. You keep more money in your pocket, which allows you to grow faster. Really, really, really cool product that we're excited about. We're doing a lot of them right now, right? For people who are able to get, aggressive offers accepted and potentially get some over appraisals. We're able to utilize that and increase their leverage on that equity up front, which is pretty cool. I did mention bridge product. I just want to explain that. It's usually a short-term loan that's just meant for either acquisition or renovation, and usually has like a balloon payment after like 12 or 18 months, right? So not a long-term loan, not a 30-year fixed, something meant just to get in and get out, right?
And on the bridge product, I've used a couple of the, I think they're national, like your Lending One type people. And
yeah, they do them.
They, I think it was 90-10. I did on my beach deal 3 years ago, and then I refied out with them. And I have no disparaging words, but the loan actually took a little while to close. It was full appraisal underwriting, and I believe there's other bridge products that are probably as competitive on rate and term, but they close much faster, like on BPOs or internal valuations.
Correct.
Can you shed any light on that?
100%. Yeah, and we do them. So we have some, and those are less so like bridge programs. They're just like true hard money, right? It's like no verification of anything. You put 25, 30, 35% down, and we'll lend it to you with a BPO and just our opinion of the value, and close in 3 days. We absolutely have that. Our bridge product does require, like, a lot of times a renovation bid, a full appraisal, right? So things like that. The rates are a little bit more competitive than just like the true hard money. And the biggest thing is that the down payment's less, right? The true hard money that closes in 3 days is probably going to want at a minimum 25 or 30% down with most cases, unless you develop a relationship of 4 or 5 deals done with them, right?
Gotcha.
Whereas the bridge allows you to save some of that initial investment. A little bit lower rate, just a little bit more tedious underwriting process. We can still close in 30, no problem, though, on our bridges. Many times less than 30.
What, you're in this world so much more than me. What's your favorite, if you're going to do like we'll call it, value add, let's pick a run of the mill, let's make it easy. 4-unit value add deal. Would you do like your bridge product and then refi into, obviously, and buy down your rate maybe? Or what do you like to do for a value add investor?
Yeah, good question. And I have a brand new product that we don't have access to yet, but probably by the time this episode posts, we will have it. It's probably going to roll out next week. This is the product that I would use. It is a bridge, but it's structured differently. They allow you to go up to 90% of the ARV, so that you have to get a bid and you have to get an ARV appraisal. An ARV is just after repair value, so that's what you're going to do to the property, right? So say you buy for $500,000, it's going to be worth $600,000, right? After you put $40,000 into it, whatever, right? They go up to 90% of that exit value. They pre-fund you the first 12 months of your payments, so you don't have a mortgage for 12 months. And they upfront fund you the capital for the renovations instead of draws. And I'm using a lot of terms here, I know that, so I'll explain. Typically, you would get a loan and you start having a payment like maybe in 1 or 2 months after, right? And you have to pay 9 or 10 months payments while you're doing that 12 months of renovations, right? What they do is that they take the full aggregate of your 12 months that you're going to be making in interest payments, they lend it up front, so they're basically pre-funding you your monthly payments. So you have no holding cost. Your holding cost is gone for the first year, right? It's prepaid.
Mm-hmm.
Then they take, when you're doing renovations, typically lenders will break it up into like 2 or 3 or 4 draws sometimes, where they'll give your contractor a $20,000 draw to buy the material, then he has to prove that he bought the material, then they give him a $20,000 draw to break ground, and they give him a $20,000 draw to get the finishings, and then they give him a $20,000 draw to finish the fixtures. Something like that, right? It would be structured in draws, and that can limit your productivity, right? Because they got to go inspect it and make sure you did the work, yada, yada. When you can get that initial funding up front, way better, right? Because you take the money, do with it what you want, right? And you work with your contractor and you get it done. Really cool loan product that we're going to have access to, like I said, hopefully within about 10 days from, we're recording this on September 14th. So hopefully by October, let's say, somebody reaches out to us, we should have access to this program by then.
That's very attractive. So we'll certainly be in touch. And I hope the audience is grasping all this. And if they don't, go back and listen to it again. This is really good stuff. This is how equity and money is made. These loan products allow you to do it. So, they made all the difference in my life. You have to have for those of us that come from, like we said half an hour ago, humble beginnings, even if you don't come from humble beginnings, knowing your debt structures, that's the way to go. And one little corollary to Christian's comment about the normal way they fund these rehabs. I did one, a different lender than we discussed earlier, and it was, I think, a $1,000 wire fee it was either $1,000 or like $850 to actually fund the draw along the way. And so what you would do is, like, let's say you had, let's make it easy, $100,000 rehab, and I want to take like that first $25,000 bite. Well, now you're playing this game, like, what does that really buy me? And they had somebody come out and visual, just a site visit, and there was a wire fee. And by the time they come out and look at it, and one, I mean, I won't curse at this woman on the show, but one woman came out there, looked around, and she's like, well, I don't see how you spent $25,000. I'll give you the receipts. It's the beginning of construction. The stuff adds up. There's not a lot to show for it.
Permitting, designs, plans, all that, right?
You see that stack of material in the corner? But and then I had to haggle over that funding. And so I love what you're talking about. And so by the time this show airs, that'll be a product that I think myself and the listeners should be, reaching out to you about.
Yeah, 100%. And even like something that people don't consider. Say you have $1,000 draw on say you make 4 draws. $1,000 a draw, that's $4,000. Mm-hmm. People will never think of it like this, but if you had a $100,000 loan, you can think of that as you increased your interest rate by 4%.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right.
That's the same result, right? You spent 4% more on that draw than your interest rate said. So if you had a 10%, no, you didn't. You really had a 14% loan there, right? Because you spent an extra 4% just to get the money. Right? And all of a sudden, when I run this at 14%, my rate of return isn't as good, and that kind of sucks, right? But understand your loan products and make sure you're working with someone who can advise you correctly. That's priority number one, like you said. That's half of the goal of getting to financial freedom and realizing, financial literacy is understanding debt principles, right?
I love it. Yeah, you don't want to be the guy who's like, wow, I don't have very high origination fees, but I'm happy, but I'm waiting forever for my money, getting inspected and paying $1,000 a draw. Yeah, you don't want to be that investor. Well, let's pivot just a little bit into your personal investments or what you've partnered on. What are you liking to buy? What are you looking forward to buy? Let's jump into that investment world on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, full disclosure, I'm a short-term rental investor. I believe in the industry. I know a lot of people say, aren't you scared that people stop vacationing? Not really in the markets that I buy in. They're so local to so many urban metropolitan areas, and I buy unique enough properties that I've done my research and my analysis, and I have 4 or 5 years pro forma, not pro forma, but historicals to develop my pro forma, that I invest in where I have confidence. And I believe that I'm a fair representation of the type of person that I would want renting my properties. I'm higher than average net worth. I have a good job. I'm not going to tear the place apart when I rent it, right? I'm not throwing a rager in there. So I would like to appeal to myself. So I'm a huge proponent of invest in what you believe in, right? For some reason, and there's a lot of people who do it, by no means am I saying it's the wrong move. Like I don't know if you're familiar with like the Joshua Tree area in California and all that, like out in the desert.
By way of the internet, I am. I haven't been
there. Yeah. So, huge Airbnb destination. It's out in the desert. There's nothing there. There's a couple, like, concerts that go on, and, like, Coachella's down in that area. But, like, people go out there to, like, vibe and get in touch with their inner self and stare up at the stars where there's no light pollution, right? Like, I get it. I hate being hot. I would never vacation in the desert. Like, I just wouldn't do it, right? Put me on the ocean or put me in the forest. I'm a big snowboarder. So, like, throw me on a mountain, and I'm good, right? Mm-hmm. So, I personally will never invest in Joshua Tree because I invest in what I believe in. Does that mean there's not good opportunities there? Of course not, right? But when you look at the areas I invest in, Florida, along the coast, huge population of visitors, good market. I see appreciation happening in the foreseeable future. I invest in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Massive vacation destination. It's the number 1 visited national forest in America. Number 1 visited national park. And by the way, that's greater than Yosemite. That's greater than Yellowstone. That's greater than Zion National Park. Like these places that are on the screensavers of Macs, right? There's no Smoky Mountain screensaver on Mac, right? But it has more visitors per year than all the other places. And the reason being is how many urban centers are in the area around it. You got Charlotte, you got Atlanta, you got Virginia, you got all these places that kind of congregate in the Smoky Mountains. So first and foremost, my buy box is just a market I believe in. Okay, a market that I see future success, and the only way that I'll invest in a short-term rental market is if the regulations and ordinances have already been established. So are there short-term rental permits, right? When there's a permit process in place, I've seen that if there's a permit where the city is making money on short-term rentals, they're usually not going to go away. And I'm sure somebody may shoot in the comments section, there's this exception that happened in Honolulu, Hawaii, which is true. But in most areas, if the city or state is making money on a property, they're probably not going to do away with that regulation. What they will do is just not allow any new ones and grandfather in the existing ones, right? Which I'm grandfathered, right?
Even better for you.
Exactly, yeah. Or the alternative is I invest in a market where there's no guidelines like the Smoky Mountains, where the entire area is dependent on tourism. That's Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, if you guys have ever been there. Massive tourist destination. If they said no more Airbnbs, no one would be there, right? And there's theme parks there, and I think there's talks of like casinos going in and a bunch of cool stuff in the area. So that's number one, and I have a very simple buy box financially speaking. I take the purchase price, I multiply that by 15%. So $1 million, 15% is $150,000. That's what I want to see my gross rentals. Pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. So if I buy $1 million asset, if it grosses on Airbnb $150,000 a year, and people may say, well, certain areas have different taxes and property management. You're right, 100%. I've determined if I can make a very straightforward underwriting criteria that works in every market, I go to my realtor, and you're a realtor. So imagine you have an investor that's capable of buying multiple properties a year, and I tell you, I give you my unhindered authority to write on a property if it fits this type of market, if it looks like this, if it's unique, and if it meets my 15% rule. And I actually give my realtors limited power of attorney to write contracts on my behalf. And now imagine you just got a full go-ahead. The realtor's going to be pretty motivated to go find me the best deal, right? Mm-hmm. So I've found that's the way that I've established really strong realtor networks out there, is give them a very simple buy box and let them go have fun, right? And it's worked out pretty well.
That's pretty, obviously I've seen, especially like on larger commercial transactions, you can empower like your acquisition guy or certain people to buy in the entity when they're not really a principal. But what you did is really, I'm glad you said that. That's more novel. I don't think many people are doing that. And you're absolutely right. By keeping your criteria super simple and turning over power to a local agent with a commission carrot, oh man, that's actually, that's really smart. I like that.
Well, and then it has compounding impacts, because when that realtor gets a pocket listing or an off-market property, who's the first person they're probably showing it to, right? Hey, Christian, this property's outside of maybe I said a purchase price of $700,000 to $1 million. This one's 1.1. I know, but look at this. It's a 20%, right? Instead of a 15 or some, fill in the blank, right? Some really good aspect to it. I'm probably the first person they're bringing that to, right? And that's the power of developing relationships. And I mean, you're in the industry, you know how strong that is, but the power of developing that and having a good lender you can trust, and a realtor and a property manager. David's book, Long Distance Real Estate Investing, talks about the core four, right? So that's in any market that you invest in that's outside of your locality, develop a core four, right? Develop your property manager, develop your realtor, develop your lender, and develop your contractor and your fix-it, your do-it-all man, right? You can't do it without those, right? What happens if your water heater breaks? You're not going to call your realtor, right? And if you have those people established, which I have in those markets that I've targeted, sky's the limit, right? Properties aren't problems because you have people that can fix it.
I've come into this dilemma recently because I have this larger apartment in Georgia. I'm in North Florida, and it's just far enough away. It's like 2.5 hours away. I really can't. I can't even really micromanage it if I wanted to. So I asset manage the manager. We have a call every month. Either myself or my partner drive over there. I'd like to say every month. That's not even true. And we have a CapEx team, and it's humming along nicely. Where I get myself in trouble are these smaller deals closer to my home, closer to my office, where I'm I don't need a general contractor. I'll manage my vendors. The 4-unit deal I referenced earlier, I'm going to at least start doing it myself. Maybe I'll bring in Sammy. You don't know this, the producer of the show. You might be involved in managing a 4-unit Airbnb. But, it's these smaller deals close to home that make you break your rules. It's to your point, get a property, 1,000 miles away with enough scale to where it's I can't do any of this.
It's not an option.
Exactly. Not even an option. And it's a good trick to your mind. And, Although I'm going backwards right now with my current deal, but I like that you brought that up. I think.
Well, and I will say I've gone backwards in some degree as well. Now, I don't personally manage any of my properties. I'm running a business. I don't have the capacity to do that. But what I have done is I found a cool little loophole, and I won't call it a loophole because it's a really good thing, right? It's not like I'm scamming a loophole out of someone, right? But what I've done is I've offered to partner with people. And we'll have some split on the down payment, but I'll say, hey, I'm willing to partner with somebody who has Airbnb experience, who knows the platform, who knows the algorithms, who knows how to get these places rented, who communicates with clients well, who knows how to set up and furnish an Airbnb, because that's big, right? It could take 2 or 3 months to get a property ready to rent, and that's 2 or 3 months of lost revenue. And in some of my properties that do $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, $20,000 a month times 3, that's $60K in lost revenue. I'm not doing that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you can get somebody who can get that done in 1 month instead of 3, you inherently saved $40,000, right? So what I've done is I've partnered with people who I've said, hey, your contribution is partnership. My contribution is getting the lending, qualifying, researching the property, researching the area, making sure we don't make a bad investment. Your contribution is making sure you continue it in a good investment standing, right? Mm-hmm. Maintaining the guest, doing checkouts, having checklists for the cleaners, all that kind of stuff, maintaining a good review rate on Airbnb. And I say Airbnb, but we use VRBO and all the different booking platforms. My property's on Expedia, right? So there's a lot of different resources. But that's kind of a workaround. And you can kind of call that self-managing because the ownership entity is managing it. Mm-hmm. It's just not me. I found people who are willing to take that endeavor on and who have experience that I trust, at an expense of, hey, or at the savings of a property management, right? So we don't have that margin that we need to make up. And that's been very, very good for me as well. Obviously, I'm not telling everybody to partner, do it with the right people, right?
Certainly. And just a little follow-up. Are you, say that partner, let's just say I'm going to run it and we're going to co-invest. Would you have me sign on your loan, or your hypothetical partner? Would they also be would they be entitled and on the loan, or how would you normally treat that? If that's too nuanced or whatever, don't worry about it.
No, you're good. That's a good question. It depends on the structure of the partnership. I have one partner who's a silent partner who basically invested and he gets a split of the returns, but he doesn't own the equity. Right, so he was an income investor, and that's kind of like an REIT or something like that, right? Where he just invested into me, pretty much. And then I have a partner who's like a co-signer on the loan with me, right? Like we're getting the loan together, we're on property together. Our kids are going to inherit it equally, right? The whole 9 yards, right? So it absolutely, there's not a right or a wrong way to do it. There's not a way that I would advise people. I would talk to someone and help them arrive at the right conclusion. But I mean, there's partnerships can be structured a million ways, right? I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do it.
Well, if you don't, I think this is a good opportunity so short-term rental is your focus. Let's talk about, where are you trying to be? Are you trying to grow a portfolio that's more or less all short-term? Is that your preferred asset class? What are some of your goals?
Yeah, me personally, it is my preferred asset class, and maybe it's selfish nature. I like also having houses to go to in the markets I like to visit, right? Yeah. So when they're not rent, if you invest long term, you can't stay in that house, right? Your roommate doesn't want to bunk with their landlord, right? But I can go visit my property in Florida. I can go to the Smokies, right? I have some properties in Virginia that are in pretty cool areas. I can go there, right? Thinking about eventually a property in Galveston, Texas, right? Thinking about something on the Gulf Coast that may be a really cool property on the ocean, right? So I invest, like I said, I really stick to my principle of invest in what you believe in, kind of because I want to believe in it because I'd like to utilize it, right? Mm-hmm. And for instance, one of actually David and I co-purchased a property in the Smoky Mountains. We just did a team retreat there. So I took my 8 top producing loan officers and we went there for 10 days. And it's got an indoor pool. It's got 2 jacuzzis. It's got a pool table, arcade games. We had a great time. It was like a really fun trip, right? But we were only able to do that because we were targeting that type of asset class, right? If somebody's just looking to buy the fourplex, I'm not going to take my team to a fourplex, and nothing against, I'm not going to say a market, right? But a fourplex in an area that you wouldn't vacation in, right? I'm not going to take my team as a reward for their production and stay there, right? So my investing journey is a little bit kind of like a hybrid, but the short-term rentals enable me to cash flow enough in order to compensate for these maybe personal uses or other other ventures that I couldn't cash flow enough to compensate for with long-term rental. So definitely my preferred asset class. Am I thinking bigger multifamily in the future? Absolutely. And bigger multifamily, like 20 plus units is what I refer to there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think I'm either going to go short-term rental or big, like that 2 to 16 space. I just don't have a lot of personal desire for, to be honest.
Gotcha. And we're kind of diving into like some of the criteria of what I call the coach's case study segment. And we talk about finding it, funding it, fixing it, exit if you're going to exit, and learning a lesson. You've actually kind of already talked us through a really cool idea about finding deals with that limited power of attorney, getting off-market deals through local brokers. We already talked about funding it because your loan programs at your platform work on a lot of the investments that you're already buying. So 100%. That's wonderful. Talk to us about your, what I would call number 4, the exit/hold. What's your preferred structure there?
Yeah, my exit, obviously, my short-term rentals. My goal is to never exit, right? My goal is to have these properties for the foreseeable future and take advantage of the appreciation in these markets that I believe in, as well as having them continue to cash flow. So, I mean, I don't do fix and flips. I just don't. I don't want to be, intimately involved in every one of my purchases and be talking to a contractor and picking out the wood floors, right? The most involved I ever get is like furnishing a short-term rental, right? And most of them I try to purchase coming furnished, right? So yeah, exit strategy is just long-term cash flowing asset is the goal.
Beautiful. All right. And I have a thing about, biggest lesson within that kind of coach breakdown. It sounds like you've done enough of these short-term rentals. What are some like lessons or takeaways on the investment side? Maybe something you thought that was harder than you would have imagined going in, or some kind of a takeaway for the audience?
Yeah, good question. I have a couple. I'll say furnishing a short-term rental and like getting the fixtures is more expensive than you'd think. Furniture adds up when you're furnishing, 4 or 5 bedroom house. I would say I had some less than ideal experiences with realtors, so that's caused me to kind of condense my team and make sure that we're really letting the gold to show itself, right, for the people who really add a lot of value. And really, lastly, like with Airbnb specifically, and this doesn't really pertain to other investment strategies, but like, recognize your neighbors. Like when I buy a new Airbnb, I send gift baskets to the house across the street and the 2 on the side of me. And I say, hey, just full disclosure, I want to let you know, here's my personal cell phone. Here's a gift basket. We're going to be running an Airbnb. I want to let you know we have very strict house rules. If there's anything you would like us to add to our house rules, like specific quiet hours, or if you have a specific day of the week where maybe your kid has a test or I don't know, something, right? Where like it's a particularly stressful day, let me know. I'll make sure the tenants know that. Our goal is to be running an Airbnb that you don't even know about. That's the perfect Airbnb, the one your neighbors don't know about, right?
Yeah.
And that leads to, I've had so much good. I mean, I got a birthday card from one of my neighbors this year.
Wow.
And it's like my neighbor that's besides an Airbnb is sending me birthday cards. Like that doesn't happen. Like, usually they hate you, right? Yeah. Usually they're the ones complaining about you. And that leads to you not getting, if you're in an area where there may be some, I'm not, but if a lot of people invest in areas where there's a little bit of questionable regulations, right? That leads to you not getting fined. That leads to you not getting a concern, right? And I have had noise complaints, right? We have camera set up and we have ways to contact the tenants that's not just their cell phone, right? We can beam, I've done the house all like smart home, right? So like we can beam into the, we have a little like announcement thing. Like, hey guys, just FYI, we hear you in the backyard. Neighbors are trying to sleep. It's quiet hours. Turn it down. Yeah, we're not trying to be disrespectful, you guys. We're not trying to impose on your fun. Like if you could bring it inside, just please do that, right? Wow. And usually tenants, usually they're pretty nice, right? Of course you have some tenants that are just like, I'm going to get you banned from Airbnb because of how disrespectful you were, right? But more people, more often than not, especially when you target the higher value homes, you're usually going to be getting higher value tenants, right? And I've noticed that personally. So my last point that I'll make, and this is a big one. I won't say her name, but somebody on my team, kind of mine and David's real estate and lending team, we shared our personal experiences. We kind of went in different directions where I targeted higher asset classes, the riskier assets, right? The $6, $7, $8, $1 million homes. And she invested in a smaller market like, the bigger pockets and a lot of people, I want to go buy the $100,000 home that cash flows $200 a month, right? At the same exact time, we both had an HVAC system go out. It was almost uncanny. At like the same day, my HVAC system on my $500,000 cabin in the Smokies went out at the same time as her $100,000 house in Indianapolis. Crazy enough, we got the bill for both of the HVACs, and guess how much they were similar by? They were almost the exact same number. So I look at that and I say, so this is a fixed expense, and it was like $6,700. We had to completely redo the system. Like they were both completely shot. Now I'm looking at that and saying, I have a cabin that cash flows $4,000 or $5,000 a month after all my expenses. So that's like a month and a third of my income to replace my HVAC. You're cash flowing $200 a month. That's like 2 years of income from you is sapped away because you had to repair an HVAC. Like, it just seemed ludicrous to me. So I had this like eye-opening revelation that like there's this mindset in the industry that the cheaper homes are safer. But like, I think it's the opposite. Like, you don't get any benefit of appreciation because if a $100,000 house appreciates by 10%, you have $10,000. When my house happens, I have $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And whenever one big repair happens, the roof costs the same because the houses are probably the same size, right? 3-bed, 2-bath houses. But like, a roof is a fixed cost, right? Mm-hmm. An HVAC's a fixed cost. So that was really eye-opening to me that like, man, this asset class that people think is so safe, so conservative because it's cheaper is really not, right? And granted, I understand there's a cheaper cost of entry, so by no means am I saying just go straight to a $500,000 house for everybody who can't do it. But if you're deciding between 5 $100,000 houses and one $500,000 house, like, I think the decision's kind of there, right? When there's fixed costs to take to bring into consideration. Maybe that was more than you asked for, but that's been my biggest kind of revelations.
Well, I can't say thank you enough. I mean, you've really like pelted us with actionable nuggets that, some people speak in generalities. You were really good today about giving us like essentially like marching orders and tips and things you've done, and they all come from your experience. So
appreciate that.
I like what you're saying too about, if you don't, I would, it's a separate podcast conversation, but now I'll look at deals, and part of it is just the purview of, let's just, for argument's sake, say we're somewhere in the same zone on investments. I don't want to touch something that doesn't have a minimum monthly cash flow because I just don't want to get involved. I don't want it in my mind. I don't want it clouding my time and judgment, and I don't want it to stress me. So like, even though I'm doing a 4-unit deal now, which is a little on the small side, at least I know. I'm pro forma. I'm probably 12 to 16,000 a month in revenue on that with the 4. Yeah, so it's worth the time. I mean, it should cash flow after all expenses at least 50, maybe 60 grand a year. So I mean, I used to teach high school for $34,000 a year.
There you go. I mean, one house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So but to your point, like it wouldn't be very exciting to jump into buying 5 $100,000 each houses that cash flow a couple $100 a month. I mean, no, I think you made a really good point there. And we all have to start somewhere. And again, separate podcast conversation.
Of course.
I do think that for the average person, it's kind of hard to argue that house hacking isn't one of like the best ways to get started because it's so easy.
I think there's no argument. Yeah, undoubtedly the best. If you can deal with roommates, I mean, oh my God. I have people that we do loans for that are living in San Francisco in the Bay Area for free.
Yeah.
And it blows my mind that you go buy a duplex or a 4 or 5 bedroom house and rents in the Bay Area are like $1,500 a bedroom. It's like ludicrous. It's like wild, right? And you get 4 people paying $1,500 each. It's like, you got $6,000 a month in rent coming in. Your mortgage is $5,000. Congratulations, you won. Yeah. You're making $1,000 to live in the Bay Area. Like, done. And they're paying your mortgage, right? Like,
right.
I mean, house hacking, undoubtedly, especially for like the young single person or maybe the young couple that can stomach having roommates at the expense of having roommates at the benefit of like a supreme wealth generation tool. Mm-hmm. I think there's no debate, right? I mean, that it's undoubtedly the best entry point.
Yeah, there was not to linger too far, but I think there was like the short little snippet from Brandon Turner, and he's like, if somebody really, and I don't know Brandon, you probably know him, but if somebody just wants like super actionable advice and like an elevator pitch, he's like, house hack and drive a car with no payment. Because by living for free and having no car payment, What's your excuse? I mean, you're probably up $30,000 to $50,000 a year by no housing and no
Easily.
car. Easily. So it's like, now what's your excuse? I mean, if you can't go start investing with that newfound liquidity, then something's wrong on your end.
And it's so funny. That sounds so basic and so simple. When like somebody hears that, they're going to say, yeah, of course that makes sense. But the people who actually take that action are so few and far between. I mean, I'll get people who call me and say, how do I qualify? How are people qualifying for houses? I'm like, well, you're paying $3,500 a month in rent right now. Like, what if we just removed that, got you in a house, and now you're living for free with house hacking? Well, okay, so I'm like, okay, cool. We just added $40,000 a year to your income. What do you think about that? Oh, okay, well, like, that's the equivalent of me getting a $40,000 job a year raise. Yeah, basically. Right? And then imagine you took that $40,000 in 1 year, you paid off your car and your wife's car. Now your $600 a month car payments are gone. Now I just gave you another $1,200 a month raise. And now we're making $60,000 a year. Do you think you can invest with an extra $60,000 a year? Well, yeah, if I had an extra $60,000. Cool. Well, I just gave you actionable steps. Let's go get $60,000 a year. Right?
I know. No, it's wonderful.
It's wild,
like that expression, simple, not easy. But it's like, and truth be told, I'm not even sure the not easy part is accurate. I mean, what you just said is simple and honestly pretty damn easy. Especially if you can walk into like, your brokerage and say, here's my, I'm a regular W-2 employee. The mortgage, it will appear.
We do it all the time.
Do it all the time.
We're like, I don't even call myself a loan officer. We're like financial guides, right? Like, show me what you're working with. I'll build a roadmap for you, right? And it's also fun. Obviously, you can tell probably how I'm expressing myself. I enjoy what I do, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely comes through, and we're having a great time. I think this is perfect to jump into what I call the Coach Brown breakdown, and we're just going to run through just the final 4 questions, and we'll let everybody know at the end how to get a hold of you.
Awesome.
All right, Christian, what is the most impactful real estate or business book or personal development book that you have recently read?
It's a good question. I'm going to take the easy route here. I'm going to shout out my business partner, David Greene. He's written multiple books, both personal development in terms of salesmanship with his real estate agent series. I think he's got Sold and Skill that are out. There's going to be a third spinoff on that series as well. And then obviously his Burr books and long distance real estate investing are gold mines for people looking for more creative strategies in real estate. Must reads, in my opinion. You got to check them out.
Wonderful, and I agree. When you are not smashing your professional goals, what are you doing for fun?
Alluded to a little bit. I'm a big snowboarder. Love snowboarding. I play basketball as well, and it's funny because I'm a 5'7" white guy, but I got a lethal step back. So you'll find me at some local parks every now and then at a pickup game with people probably twice my size, and I enjoy that challenge. But snowboarding in the summers is actually absolutely by far my favorite activity.
Wonderful. I used to live in Washington State. Obviously, I'm in Florida now, but I miss it. I haven't snowboarded much at all in the past. My daughter's 17, and I haven't snowboarded much living in Florida with a 17-year-old. But I loved being on the mountain when the chairlift gets through the cloud line.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Absolutely.
Now for your best advice for the Yield Coach audience, these eager entrepreneurs, what do you want to smack them in the face and tell them?
I think the best thing that I can say is I'm a very logical, straight to the point person, right? If you give me any two things to compare, I'm always going to try to strip away all the crud and find which one's actually better. When you compare real estate to any other investing strategy, when you really truly consider them, when you have real estate making rental income and appreciation while being able to write off depreciation and tax benefits and principal pay down, when you compare that to something like a stock that has to go up, right? And if it goes up, you pay capital gains taxes on it. And if it goes down, you can't write off more than $3,000 in capital gains. And maybe the only other method of income is maybe a dividend stock. You're comparing something that has 6 or 7 income generation tools to something that has 1. And I would really like to, at some point in time, get everybody off of the 401k and into a more active strategic real estate investment that truly builds wealth. Because it breaks my heart to see people like, my mom's not that way anymore, but people like my mom who kill themselves at their W-2 job. And in 15 years of working, they got $100,000 in their 401k. And it's like, $100K at this rate of inflation is like a year and a half of living expenses. And it's like there's nobody that should work for 30, 40, 50 years and have a year and a half of living expenses saved. That's not right. That's not the fact that that's how people have been guided in America. It just irks me. So don't be afraid to reach out. And this is not a sales pitch for me. Reach out to anybody. I don't care. If it's in real estate, if it's me, awesome. I'd love to help. But real estate makes more millionaires than anything else in the world. It's just facts. It will always be that way. And not enough people realize that they're 2 or 3 properties away from being millionaires. They really are. It's that simple, right? More than you bargained for, but yeah. That's what I got.
No, it's wonderful. And I know you and I could go forever. I haven't said this before, but I think this might be an episode that people would really benefit from listening to more than once. There's just a lot in this episode. I know we ran a little bit longer than usual, but it's for a very good reason. All right.
Appreciate that.
Lastly, Christian, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, great question. So I actually have a team running my social media now. So I'm on Instagram at @the_one_broker. So the One Broker. You can find us on theonebrokerage.com as well. My email is christian@theonebrokerage.com. If you are looking to get in touch or get pre-approved for a loan or just want some financial guidance, me and my team are happy to provide that. And obviously anything on the Bigger Pockets YouTube channel or David Greene, if you just go on YouTube and search my name, you'll see the videos that I've been with on him. A lot of good stuff. I feel like every time I'm on one of these, I end up going over because I talk too much. But very much appreciate the time. And if you guys are looking to get me anywhere, search my name. There's some content out there you can find me on, and I'd appreciate any feedback that people can give me as well.
Wonderful. Well, Christian, you are a top-tier guest. You can take all the time you want. We loved having you on. So.
Appreciate that.
All right, and if you guys enjoyed the show, hopefully even a bit as much as I did, go ahead and share it with a friend. There's so many people that can benefit from what Christian had to say today. Just jump on your phone, share this episode. If you're on YouTube, forward the link. Let's spread the word. It's really a good message, and there's some great takeaways in here. All right, guys. Well, for now, that is the Yield Coach Show wrapping up, and this is Coach Brown signing off and telling everybody to lace up and leave it all on the field. Yield Coach out.